I'm Majo John Madden at this really wonderful picnic bench made out of bricks and concrete. So solid. Out in the country. We're in the Los Troncones neighborhood outside of Victoria, Mexico. Right up against the Los Troncones section of the Sierra Madre Oriental mountain range. I made a video much earlier today up in the orchard back there about Mexico and class. How I've observed social class playing out in Mexico. Having spent my first couple of weeks in Mexico at the very lovely Hampton Inn, part of the Hilton chain, for some number of years, that was loaded with business travelers and middle-class vacationers. And now I've spent something like 11 days out in the country with, I don't know if they'd identify as peasants, poor Mexicans, working-class Mexicans who live real close to the grain and sure do not aspire to middle-class pretensions, be they American or Mexican. So it's had me thinking a lot about my evolution around class. My Irish Catholic family on the west side of Chicago was very working class, very blue collar. My father took on a trade and became quite good. I think he was probably part of the electrician workers union at AT&T, Ma Bell. I think he literally worked for Illinois Bell back then, but it was before divestiture, so it was all one big company, by far the biggest company in the world. And I later worked for the AT&T corporate part after divestiture, when it was still, the corporate part was still the largest company in the world, even after shedding the baby bells. And I was a management consultant there. Very different role from being an installer. My dad was always an installer, and when they tried to make him a supervisor, he didn't like that at all, because he was kind of a shy, unassertive guy, and he didn't like trying to give orders. It wasn't his thing at all. So he went back to being an installer. My parents were Depression-era folks. My dad was born in 1902, I'm pretty sure, and my mom in 1913. So they came through the Depression, and like most parents of that era, wished for their kids to move up in the middle class, and sent a whole generation of us off to college. I was the first generation to attend college in my Irish family, aside from my uncle, who had become a priest, and he did college and much more. They wanted us to have better income, better houses. My parents were actually the first part of our big extended West Side Irish family to move to the suburbs and have their own home. And it was one of the reasons that a lot of family gatherings happened at my house. We had some forest preserve behind us. It was really an escape and a wonderful thing for the family to get out there. But I, being the first year of the baby boomers, born in 46, I think that's the first year, was influenced by all kinds of cultural forces that never touched them. They knew nothing about Freud or psychology or anything like that. And I became a psychologist, having attended a real working class college, Loyola of Chicago, because I was accepted at the University of Chicago on the south side of Chicago, one of the great institutions in the country, because I had a great grade point average and stuff. But my family had heard that the University of Chicago was loaded with communists. It was the era. And they didn't just say that. they employed my uncle, priest, who at that point had risen really high in the Jesuits and was the president of Loyola University. He invited me to lunch with him and explained why Loyola would be a better education for me, and that I would have a scholarship there, a full scholarship to go to Loyola. So that was irresistible. And I loved being with they were all my people, working class, Chicago folks, ethnic folks, Polish, Irish, Italian, looking to rise ourselves in the world. But going to college from 64 to 68 college at our campus. Now, all those social forces hit the Midwest, and a working class commuter school, Catholic school in the Midwest. All those open sexuality and political things hit us later. But by 1967, I was a member of the SDS, Students for Democratic Society, very idealistic organization out of the chute, looking to change society, and did spawn the Violent Weathermen group. Bob Dylan saying you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. But they did bomb a science building at Madison and killed a student, I think one. I was a protester at the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago. Abby Hoffman, the Chicago 7, the big movie a couple years ago. That was a very powerful movie for me because I lived it. I was out there on the front lines. I did get maced and tear gassed by what the media acknowledged was a police riot. Mayor Daley, one of the last most powerful boss mayors, infamously corrupt and very powerful Irish politician. Yeah, police riot. They were out of control. I remember being on the front lines there, facing off against the cops outside of the Conrad Hilton Hotel, I think on Michigan Avenue, and having someone billy club the person next to me and screaming, "Hit me! Hit me! You can hit them, hit me!" They didn't, but they maced and tear gassed us. I remember running from the attack of the cops and then lobbing tear gas grenades over our heads, so we had to run through it. When I got home that night, my girlfriend broke out into a rash from hugging me because I had tear gas and mace all over me. So I was radicalized. That really radicalized me. And we went back to nature. When that girlfriend and I got married, we decided to live in the country. After grad school, our first house out in the country, first house we owned, had been abandoned for 4 years, but a really good friend of ours who knew, he was a country guy, but a math prof, he knew buildings. He said, it's very structurally sound. It's good. It's a good investment. You're getting a good deal here. But when her parents came out to visit us, before we had moved in, as we came over the hill and saw the building, her mom began to weep. So we were going in the wrong direction according to the culture. We were countercultural. And we were using marijuana and expanding our consciousness and doing meditation, doing everything that her parents and my parents found abhorrent. Now I'm right on 10 minutes because there's more I want to say about how this is playing out for me as an old guy now, 76. How I'm going through a very similar wave of going countercultural by leaving my apartment in the city, getting a camper van, and now traveling for 3 years, living on the road, my friends. Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard is going to keep you pure and clean. Living on the road, my friends, going to keep you pure and clean. It has. It's made my consciousness clean, and and I'll describe more in another video.